All right, hey people, today is July 13th, 2024. I'm Chris Lucas. I'm not going to be doing too many videos because I'm in the process of moving. So I just wanted to say that real quick. But I thought I'd do this video because I think I can keep it real simple and real fast. So let me take myself out of the picture. And basically, this is just going to be a real simple argument against Calvinism. I don't think it's going to be that complicated. So I'll just kind of read what I wrote. So the core issue with Calvinism is that logically there is no salvation in Calvinistic determination. The core issue with Calvinism is that logically there is no salvation if Calvinistic determinism is true. So the summary of the argument would be Calvinists believe that God has predetermined every person's eternal destination, either heaven or hell. This belief leads to a fundamental contradiction when considering the concept of salvation. So what do I mean by that? One, predetermination and salvation. Calvinists assert that God has always determined who will go to heaven and who will go to hell. If a Calvinist claims that God saves some people, the question arises, how does this work? If God initially determined everyone to go to hell, then decided to save some, it implies that God's first determination was imperfect, necessitating a change. And granted, I know what Calvinists are thinking right now. They're getting upset. They're like, we don't believe this. Hold on, I'll explain that you actually do. Just give me a minute. God's role as Savior. For God to be a Savior, there must be a point where individuals are genuinely at risk of going to hell. In Calvinism, if a person was always destined for heaven, they were never truly in danger of hell, thus negating the need for salvation. Contradictions in determinism. Calvinists argue that God created a rebellious creation, yet if the creation is doing exactly what God determined, it's not really rebelling. The ideal that God determines two opposite outcomes for the same person, initially hell, then heaven, suggests that God made a mistake and had to correct it. Right? Because the question would be, why did God determine this and then later determine something else, right? Wasn't the original determination perfect enough? And now he's changing his mind, so that means he figured out something better, right? So number 4 is the illusion of salvation. Some Calvinists will argue that from a temporal perspective, it may seem like they were heading to hell, but they were always destined for heaven. This perspective implies that the danger of hell was merely an illusion, not a real threat, which undermines the concept of genuine salvation. Right? Because sometimes Calvinists will say, oh, but we were saved in time. So I guess time would be like this illusion that you're heading to hell. Like, and Chris, in time, it looks like we're heading to hell, but we're not really heading to hell. That's my point. It's just an illusion that you're going to hell because you're saying that God always determined you to go to heaven. So just because you argue that it looks like you're going to hell from your perspective, but we know that you were not always heading to hell, right? You were always heading to heaven. There was never a point where God had determined that you were going to hell. You were actually going to hell, and then God reaches out his hand and saves you. You believe that God had always determined you would go to heaven. 5, implications for God's perfection. If God determines everything, any change in determination implies that the original determination was not perfect. Therefore, a person always destined for heaven was never truly at risk of hell, and therefore there is no real salvation. So the conclusion is, for salvation to exist in Calvinism, God would have to determine everyone to go to hell initially, and then change his mind to save some. This scenario implies that God's original determination was flawed, which contradicts the notion of a perfect deity. Hence, Calvinistic determinism logically precludes the possibility of salvation. Now, if you disagree with this, all you have to do is make a video, and I'll even promote the video on my channel. I'll even talk about it if you want to, where you draw out, you make this drawing, and you can draw us out what salvation looks like. Now, matter of fact, I have done this for you for my own presentation. So let me stop that screen. And what I'll do is I'm going to share this other screen. Okay, so where is that at? So I know I did draw it up here. Oh, here we go. So as you can see on my screen, all right, I just want to make sure it's showing up there. So on my screen, this on this side, and I'll call this side A, this would be how I see salvation. How many provisionists probably see salvation. You know, we've got a person here. God basically, says, don't jump off the cliff. You jump anyway. So this is all my own determinations. I'm the one who determined I was going to jump off this cliff. God says, if you do, you're going to surely die. But I just jump anyway. So here's God over here. And despite me not listening to God and jumping anyway, God reaches out his hand to save me. All I have to do is reach out my hand to God, and I will be saved. That's it. Now, on this other side, side B, we have God determining that you are going to jump off the cliff. So he just pushes people off the cliff. It's like, yep, off you go. Whoa. And now you got God on the other side. And so there's, for salvation to exist in Calvinism, God basically shoves you off the cliff. And then God changes his mind on the other side and is like, oh, no. I shouldn't have done that. I'm going to save you from my original determination. And then the people are like, yay, God, you saved me from yourself. Right? Because the Calvinist says God pushed you off the cliff. Right? Now, this is how we're all seeing Calvinism. This is why we ask you to draw it out for us, because you're the one who says God determines everything. So what it sounds like to us is that you're like, well, did God determine me to do this thing or say this thing or go here and they're like, yes, God determines everything, even if you're going to believe or not. Oh, so I have no choice to believe in God. God has to give me that belief himself. And the Calvinist goes, yes, God has to do it. So in order for you to be saved, God not only pushes you off the cliff because he determined it, he also decided he's going to save you. So now the only way you can have salvation in Calvinism is for God to push you and then like, you know what? I thought about it a little bit more. I think I'm going to save you. And then you're like, oh, thank you for saving me from your original determination. And then Calvinists will be like, no, that makes God sound like he's not perfect. No, Chris, that's stupid. We don't believe that. Then draw it out for me. Because the only other way I can see it is that there's no salvation in Calvinism. So God always planned to push you off there, but you never had a choice to be on the bottom because God was always going to catch you. All right? So he's always going to catch you in this net. Always going to catch you. And so you're always going to get caught. He's never, ever going to let you hit the bottom. You're always going to go be caught in this thing. He's always going to reach out and save you. You had no choice of going to hell, because he was always going to save you. So he pushed you off, and he always made a plan to save you. You never had the option of hitting the bottom, because he had always determined to save you. So you were never in a threat, because even though he pushed you off the cliff, he was always there. He had always made the determination to be right here. So in the Calvinist brain, when they say God determined everything from the foundation of the world, he not only determined to push you off, but he already had the net there to grab you. And he was never going to let you hit the bottom. So you never had a choice to hit the bottom. So you were never really saved, because you were always heading to heaven. There was no chance that you were not going to head to heaven, because this was always here to grab you. It's kind of like being on a roller coaster. And even though this roller coaster is scary and you've never been on that particular roller coaster before, and you never saw how the track was built, you didn't even know what the track looked like. You just get in the roller coaster, right? So just imagine you're in a roller coaster and you're going down it, and you might sometimes feel like it's dangerous, you're going to die, but but you get to the end of it, and you can see that you made it across the thing alive, right? But no matter how scary the roller coaster looked to you, it was always built to get from point A to point B. There was never a chance when you were not going to arrive at point B. So you were always going to head from like point A over here to point B on the roller coaster. There was never, ever a chance that you were ever going to go here to C, which would be hell, right? So we'll say this is hell. Sorry, I'm using like my mouse, and it's not the best mouse in the world. So we'll just say point C is hell, right? And we'll say point B is heaven. So we got heaven over here. Oops, this is really hard to write. Sorry. But if I don't write this out, you guys won't be able to follow the chart, I guess. So we know this is heaven over here, hell down here. So your roller coaster was always going, because God determined it from the get-go, right? Was there ever a point when you were not determined to go to heaven? So if you were always determined by God to go to heaven, you were never going to hell. It only appeared like it, because when you got pushed off here, you might have been thinking you were going to go, but nope, it was never a possibility. God was always there to catch you. It was part of the ride. Like if you had a roller coaster that was designed to fly off the track and land on the other side, you were never in danger of going off the track. I mean, it looked like you were going off the track, but that going off the track was part of the ride, right? You were never like falling off the track, you were going to die. You were definitely 100% going to die. And then someone saved you, right? No. It was made to jump this particular part of the track, fly into the air, and land on the other side. And it does that perfectly every single time. It's perfect. It was perfectly constructed to do that. Therefore, there was never a possibility you were never going to get to that. You were never going to fail to get to that other side. So you were always safe. You were always saved. You were never... Well, it's not that you were ever saved, because to imply that you were saved would be to imply that you were in danger at some point, but you were never in danger at that point. So that's what I'm trying to understand. See, on my chart, the way I look at things, I was actually in a real danger. I jumped. God didn't have to save me. I jumped. He told me not to do it, right? But he reaches out his hand and saves me anyway. But I couldn't save myself at this point. So we can see how how someone from my perspective can logically see things, right? It's from when we get to the Calvinistic perspective that you're saying that God determines everything. So that means he also pushed you off. You never had a choice but to be saved. So, you never had a choice of going to hell. So if you never had a choice of going to hell, you were never in danger of going to hell. That was never a possibility because you said God always determined you to head to this other side. Well, if God always had fixed you to head to this other side, the possibility of C happening was never going to happen. I should probably put this little divider here so people understand that. This B down here just means I'm referring to illustration B, just like illustration A. So down here, you're never and you never have to fear of going to hell because your ride was always going to end up at B. You were always heading from A to B. Never this, right? So this bottom part, you were never going to go down here. Now, the other people that are going to hell, they were always heading to hell. They never, it's like God pushed them off and they had no choice. They were always going to die. And these are the people that actually need the saving right here. These people need to be saved because there's no plan for them, right? Like they were never safe. God had determined to push them off. He pushed them off. And now these people actually are in real danger. So this is the real danger right here. So I'll just put RD to make it easier for me. So RD means real danger, really going to hell, really do need to be saved. But, the Calvinists would say, well, they're always heading to hell. God had determined them to always head to hell. And therefore, they're always in danger and they will never be out of danger. These people are always safe over here. They were always determined by God to go to heaven. They were never in danger of going to hell. Therefore, they're always heading to heaven. There's never a point on this timeline from A to B where they were in danger of going to hell. That's what the Calvinist has to demonstrate. On this timeline right here, where these people are on this line right here, from God's perspective, when were these people ever in danger of going to hell? They were always determined to go to heaven from what the Calvinists tell me. And if there is a point from this timeline from A to B, where is it where they were actually like these people that I labeled RD in real danger, always heading to hell? At what point were these people ever heading to hell? What point in God's mind were these people ever heading to hell? That's all you have to demonstrate. That's all you have to draw out. At what point in God's mind were this person right here in the middle, what point were they in danger of actually heading to hell? Where you go, they're definitely going to hell. From the Calvinist point of view, it looks like you're arguing that they were never in danger. So that's my main point. They were never in danger of going to hell. Therefore, there's no salvation in Calvinism because this other person who actually is in real danger of going to hell is actually heading to hell. He's never saved. And the Calvinists say, well, God never tries to save them. But this is the only person that was ever in real danger of going to hell and is heading to hell. But the Calvinist says, no. See, these people they definitely need a savior because they're in real danger. This person does not need a savior because they're always heading to heaven. Always. It's just, the God designed everything. He pushed them off and he also decided to catch them. He was never letting them go to. They never had the option of going to hell. From what the Calvinist says, it was never an option to go to hell. Never. So what were they being saved from if it was never an option? And no Calvinist will draw me out something so I can understand it. So I'm gonna kind of read my just read something I wrote. I wonder. Oh, okay, yeah. Some Calvinists will argue, in time I was heading to hell, and I didn't know I was heading to heaven. Therefore, because I later realized I was always determined by God to go to heaven, that is how I am saved. God revealed it to me. God revealed it to me that I was actually always one of the elect, and I was actually always heading to heaven. And this is how God saves me, by letting me know I was always heading to heaven, even though it looked like I was going to hell. But I actually was not heading to hell, right? And Calvinists will freak out and go, "No, Chris, that's not how we say." Well, please draw it out for me. I've asked this several times. I think it's fairly easy, because you keep saying that in time you were heading to hell. But what I'm arguing is that when you say that, you're just saying, "Oh, well, time is an illusion," but you weren't actually heading there because God had always determined you to go to heaven. So this time is just an illusion, and now God's informing you, "No, I had always chosen you to go to heaven." And you're like, "Oh, okay, I was never heading to hell." Well, thanks for letting me know I was never heading to hell. And now if you say, "No, that's not how you see it," just explain it to me. Can you just draw it out to me? Because when I'm looking at this timeline from A to B, I don't see any time when you were actually really heading to hell. The only way that could possibly exist is if God decided to push you off that cliff, and then later on decides, "You know what, I'm going to change. I changed my mind about my original determination, and I'm going to actually save a few," right? So God changes his mind and decides to save you from his original determination. Then you actually would be in real danger, because God had determined you to go to hell. And then he's like, "Nah, never mind. I changed my mind, and I'm going to save some people from my original determination." And then those people go, "Yay, God, thanks for changing your mind and from your original determination about me and deciding to save me." See, now you would have salvation in Calvinism if it worked that way. But Calvinists will say, "No, no, no, no. God can't make mistakes and change his mind." Okay, I agree. I don't think God does make mistakes. But under your Calvinistic ideology, you do have to have God making mistakes in order to have salvation. So you got contradictions here that you're refusing to explain. And like I said earlier, let's say you have a creation. I'm trying to find the note here. Okay, so Calvinists will also tell you that God created a rebellious creation. In that sense, this creation is rebellious against God, then that's evil. But the problem is, if I create something that does a specific thing, and it does that thing I specifically created it to do, then it's not rebelling against me. So you can't say that this thing that you created is rebelling against you when it's working according to how you created it. So see, Calvinists have another contradiction here. This is why I tell atheists, that you have no morality in atheism, right? Because, an atheist will try to tell you that this thing is wrong to do, right? Like, how can you tell that a person's doing something wrong if they were never designed to operate a certain way, right? So I think a Christian can say, "Well, we were created in the image of God. Therefore, when we do not act accordingly to that image, we are doing something wrong. See, we were actually created to love and created to do things in a particular way. But we also have a free will to go against what we were originally designed and created to do. We were created to do things in a particular way, a certain way. But we also have the free will to go against that design. See, if I create a car, or if I create something with wings, wheels, and an engine, and let's say you get in it and you drive it around the block really fast, and you're like, well, it's not working right. It didn't fly. And I'm like, did it go around the block really, really fast? You go, yes, but it didn't fly. I'm like, well, I'm the creator, and I never created it to fly. I only created it to go around the block really fast. And you said it did exactly that, right? And you go, yes, but it didn't fly. But I'm the creator, and it doesn't matter what you say. I created it. Did it do what I created it to do or not? And you go, yes, it went around the block really fast. Then you have no right to tell me it's not working right, okay? If it did that exact thing. See, but if something was an accident, and let's say a factory blew up and it created something that had wings, wheels, and an engine, and someone gets in it and says, oh, it's not working right. Well, what was it designed to do? Well, it came from an explosion, so it wasn't really, that explosion never had a thought in its mind. Well, if that explosion didn't have a thought in its mind, you can't say whether it's working right or not, because it was never created with a purpose. It's just an accident. Okay, so the Calvinists have the same exact problem as the evolutionists. You cannot say that, God created this thing to be rebellious. And then when it does the exact thing it's supposed to do, how is it actually going against God's design and doing wrong if God designed it to do that specific thing in the first place? It doesn't make any sense. Just like the atheist trying to have morality and saying that life is an accident. It doesn't make logical sense. So, in conclusion, the only thing I ask a Calvinist to do is draw out salvation in Calvinism. Show me how this person was in real danger of going to hell, and then God saved them. But I don't see how it's possible, because it just seems like all God's doing. The only way salvation could occur would be for God to originally determine everyone to go to hell, then change his mind and decide to save some people from his original determination. But then that would make God's original determination not perfect, right? So that's it.